Hello, and welcome back to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and once again, we are dealing with staff tool strategies. This is a special video. We're going to talk about some alternate notation tips and tricks, particularly when applied as staff styles. And I've got a few things set up here, and I'm going to show you some things that you might encounter, and a couple problems you might run into, and solutions for them. Now, I've got this flute part set up with different ways of doing this clarinet cue right here, so just you can kind of see what's going on. And I'm going to show you a couple tricks about the blank notation staff style. First of all, the staff styles that come out of the box with Finale, there's four different blank notations. There's the blank notation layer 1, blank notation layer 4, and then further down, blank notation with rests layer 1 and blank notation with rests layer 4. If you use the first two, blank notation layer 1, what you're going to do is hide the notes, but you're also going to eliminate the default whole rest, but you're also going to leave the clarinet cue marking here. So you don't want to use that one in this particular scenario where you're trying to hide the clarinet cue from the score. What you really want to use is the blank notation with rests for layer 1, and that will leave the default whole rest, but also remove the expression there. However, I did that wrong. You never want to apply this to both places, because when you have a situation like this, really all you want to do is hide it from the score but leave it in the part. So always make sure that you're applying to current part score and finding that blank notation with rests for layer 1, right? Because again, the blank notation will apply to layer 1 and it will hide it there. So now this looks like an empty measure in the score. However, in the part, for measure 5 here, you'll see that the notes will appear just as they should for that cue. Now there's a couple other variations of this. Sometimes you'll use a whole rest in a different layer in a cue like this, just to indicate further that the flute player should be resting, while this is just a cue from the clarinet. So we can actually just use the same staff style here. Current part score, blank notation with rests, and all is well and good. You get the same result. You'll notice that the red whole rest here, though, will remain. Now, the thing about this situation is that this whole rest is actually a real whole rest. I had to enter that in layer 2. When you use a staff style that hides layer 1, you'll notice that originally the whole rest is down here. This is because the rest is in its floating position, and it's in its floating position because there's notes or entries in both layers 1 and layer 2. Without entries, this rest goes into the center position. So when layer 1 gets hidden, that's why that rest moves from its floated position into its centered position. Now, when you go into and edit these rests, if I were to go into layer 2 here in Speedy Entry and press the asterisk key, that will remove its floated position and bring it back to normal. And you can toggle that on and off just by pressing the asterisk key. It doesn't matter which version of these you use. When you apply that staff style, it will put this in the right place. The tricky thing appears when you actually start moving this rest. So if I wanted to move that rest a couple steps down, so it's a little bit further away from the notes, as soon as I apply that staff style now, actually I'll just do it here. I know I have to apply it just to the score. You'll see that the floated rest, or the second layer rest, is not floated anymore. So now it's sort of stuck in that position 2 steps lower than what it should be. So that's not exactly the ideal solution. We can always go back into Speedy Entry here and just press the asterisk to get it back to its original floating rest position. So if you do need to do something like this where you're moving the rest to a different position manually, what you can do is actually edit that staff style. So let's actually just apply it first again to, there we go. And the way I'm going to edit this, I'm going to go into the alternate notation here, is you'll see what it is. It's the blank notation with rest applied to layer 1. And in the other layers, it's showing everything, notes, articulations, expressions, etc. Well, we don't really want to see the notes in layer 2 anymore, because that's what's showing the real hard rest, because it says notes, but it's also it's basically entries, so notes and rests. So we can uncheck all these so that instead of getting the second layer rest in that weird position, it's just going to show nothing, or actually it's going to show the default whole rest, because that's the type of alternate notation that we've chosen. So when we uncheck all those options, it returns back to the way it should. You get that default hole rest that's sitting in the middle of the measure like it should. And again, we go back into the parts just to double check this, and layer 6 or measure 6 here is set up the way we want it with that second layer rest a little bit lower. So it's a little bit technical there, but that's exactly what's going on. If you kind of need to manipulate those rests, the best suggestion I can come up with is to edit that alternate notation staff style so that you're not showing these other elements in other layers for this blank notation with rests for layer 1. Now, in the next two measures, I have layer 4 set up with the cues, and in the fourth measure here, the rest is in layer 1 all the way up here. The same thing applies. There is blank notation for layer 4 for both of these. I always put cues in layer 4 because it's, I can mute layer 4 from playing back, so I'll never actually hear it. So, this is something that I would do. And again, you can just use the same thing. Oops, we'll apply to current part. Make sure that you choose the blank notation with rest for layer 4, all right? And the same thing will happen. And the same thing applies here with the rest as I just showed you. If you really want to, you can edit this staff style so that you're not showing these elements in other layers. It might be a better solution for this. So that's a lot about blank notation, but there's a little bit of stuff going on there. It gets a little bit complicated, but hopefully that makes sense now. Let me move down to something else. I'm going to look at a drum set part here. And I've got some things set up where I've got these crash cymbals. I've got some rhythmic cues that are actually part of the drum notation that is not a staff style. And I've got some bass drums and other things going on here. There are occasions, quite often in drum set parts, where you want to see this, but you'll also want to see the slashes underneath the first two measures here, and maybe also in measure 7 and 8 here as well. So how would you do this? Because if you were to just simply apply slash notation to this whole thing, what happens is that everything goes away, and now you only see slash notation, which is not exactly what you want, right? So how would we do this? Well, I'll show you. I'm going to set up a new staff style, define staff style, new, let's call this 22, and I'm going to say slash layer 4 show notes, or I should call it show other notes. There we go. Complicated name. Guess it didn't need to be that complicated, but slash layer 4 show other notes, and we're going to go into alternate notation, and I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to choose slash notation, apply it just to layer 4, and in all the other layers, I'm going to be showing everything else. By default, when you choose that slash notation, all these options will be unchecked. This is why when you choose slash notation, it's hiding everything, including layers 1, 2, 3, and 4, however you have it set up on the apply to section. But if I apply it to layer 4 and show everything else, then what's going to happen once I apply it, slash layer 4, is that you'll get the slashes covering the layer 4, but everything else will be showing, right? So now you can actually use that slash notation for this measure as well, because it will also show layer 2. All right, so that's a little quick way to do that. Oops, let me do that one more time here. The one thing about this is that sometimes, particularly with drum set parts, you'll have slash notation with the bass drum part here. And if you look at this closely, it's not exactly pretty because the slashes kind of butt up right against those bass drum notes, and it's not 100% great look. So I'm going to show you a super trick about this, which I think is really cool. And I'm actually going to do it in this measure too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new staff style. I'll call it 23 L4 slash high. Let's do that. We'll just call it that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another alternate notation style set up exactly the same way, slash notation applied to layer 4, showing everything else, right? Just like I did the other one. But I'm going to do one thing different to the entire staff style here outside of the alternate notation. There's this option for the staff appearance right here. Now this is an attribute that exists in the score manager, not in the staff attributes. We can actually change the type of staff from 5-line staff to 1-line or 0-line, or we can choose other, which pulls up this dialog box, which allows you to do a lot of really weird things, including add like 6 or 7 staff lines. You can do custom staff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do, including one option here called stem reversal. Now, this stem reversal is telling Finale where in the staff the notes flip from being down stem to up stem. And this -4 value is putting the last down stem note on the middle line, the B line, but the first up stem note on the A here, or the second space going upwards, right? It's interesting because we can change this value. If I change this from -4 to -2, -2, what happens is that the stem reversal position goes up 2 steps. So now the C in the staff will actually be going up, and the D will be going down. Now, you may be wondering what in the world this has to do with slash notation, and it is weird, but this stem reversal setting also affects where the slash notation generates from. So when you change this stem reversal setting and move it up 2 steps from -4 to -2, it also moves the slashes up 2 steps. So layer 4 slash high, and you'll see exactly that. Now the slashes are 2 steps higher. You can see that it goes from the G to the D here, but now it's going from the B to the F if we're thinking in treble clef here. So now what's really cool is that these slashes are, far enough away from the bass drum notes, and they're also still far enough away from the cymbal crashes here at the top of the staff. So that's a really cool thing that you can do. You can also do that the other way. If you had like snare drum notes or something, obviously the slashes would get in the way. So instead of using -4 value, if you use -6, then those slashes would go from the bottom line to the middle line instead of like this. So there's a lot of different options with that stem reversal. It's sort of a weirdly like hidden option that I don't even remember how I found that, but when I did, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is possible. And now you know as well. So another trick about using staff styles, you may not realize you can do this, or you may not have figured this out, but why would you? The alternate notations can also be used as staff attributes. So in this electric guitar part here, I've got all these slashes and a couple beats of normal notation and a measure of rhythmic notation. Well, you can set up this entire staff to have slash notation if you want. So just go into the staff attributes instead and choose an alternate notation for slash notation here. Click OK, and now the entire staff of the electric guitar is just slashes all the way through, and it will remain that way until you make changes. But then you can actually override the slash notation to show normal notation. So now I can select these 2 beats of bar 3 and apply normal notation, which is number 6 in the default file right here. And that will turn just those 2 beats into normal notation. So you're kind of doing it backwards. And here, instead of the slash notation, if I press R, I'll get the rhythmic notation, right? So this is sort of like a backwards way of doing it, just setting up the slash notation as the normal notation, and then the normal notation as the override, and then the rhythmic notation will also be the override here as well. So just an interesting thought in case you have a part where that the electric guitar or whatever is going to be 95% slashes. There's no reason to use staff styles for 95% of the staff. Just set the staff attributes to have that set up like that. And then here's a nifty trick that I sort of alluded to in one of the previous videos on alternate notation, but we can do interesting things like hide elements with staff styles with an alternate notation. For example, this piano part here, I've got all these staccatos here, and it may be the case that I want to have these staccatos so that Finale plays this back a little bit closer to the way I want to hear it, but it may not be what I want the player to see. So what I can do is set up a staff style. Let's do a new one, 24. Let's do new first. There we go. 24, no articulations. And I'm going to create an alternate notation for this. Now what you can do is actually use the normal notation setting here for alternate notation applied to layer 1. So you can see everything's checked here. So it's like, everything's showing as it normally would. But what you can do is just uncheck things in these sections here. Uncheck articulations for layer 1 and also uncheck it for all the other layers. So now we'll never see articulations in layers 1, 2, 3, or 4 when it's set up like this. You can also choose to hide smart shapes if you want, expressions, etc., however you want to set this up. In this case, all I'm hiding is articulation, so I'm going to uncheck those guys and set it up and then apply it here. No articulations. And there you go. So now you can actually hide the articulations in those particular measures. Of course, you could have set this up if you really wanted to, just to hide for layer 1, and keep that checked. The interesting thing to be aware of, though, is that If you have multiple staff styles that are set up like this, so you have normal notation hiding articulations, let's say you have another staff style where you have normal notation hiding expressions, as two separate staff styles, you could never overlap those staff styles, because I know I mentioned sometimes that you can have overlapping staff styles, but in this case you can't, because you can only have one alternate notation applied to a measure at a time. And so if you tried to apply an alternate notation that didn't show articulations and then tried to apply another alternate notation that didn't apply expressions, it wouldn't work. You'd actually have to create a third one that was set up to hide both articulations and expressions in the alternate notation, if that makes sense. If you ever get to the point where you're, getting down to those types of details, that's what you would need to know about that. So yeah, so just a bunch of little nifty tricks about manipulating these, alternate notation staff styles. Particularly with the blank notations, it's sort of important to understand how that works. And now I just showed you how to do some really nifty things with the slash notation, which is going to come in handy for your drum set parts. All right, so I hope this has helped. So that's all I'm going to say about staff styles and staff attributes for now. The next thing we're going to start getting into is the staff groups. So that's going to be a few videos coming up soon. All right, so once again, thanks for watching. My name is Jason, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the mailing list or to the YouTube channel. That would be awesome. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon on the next video.